A hard-spun leg break. The only one all season that's felt right out of the hand. It drifts, it dips, it turns sharply, and the overseas pro smashes it for 6 through the pavilion window. Running with the Thaden boys and getting all whirly-wobbly, timey-wimey, this is the Guerilla Cricket Podcast.
Cricket. This is all about cricket. Guerilla Cricket. Not just runs and wickets. So come and get it. Guerilla Cricket Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Guerilla Cricket Podcast. We're recording on Sunday, the 24th of May, 2020. 16 years to the day since Nasser Hussain sold Andrew Strauss down the river to deny him twin hundreds on Test debut, reached his own 100 with his favourite shot to win the Test, and almost immediately retired upwards into the Sky commentary box, citing a desire not to stand in the way of up-and-coming talent like Strauss, like Ian Bell, and Rob Key, Ian Ward, and Scott Newman. I'm your host, Nakul Pande, and I'm here to bring you more Guerilla origin stories where we find out how the love of cricket took root for some of our favourite Guerilla contributors. On the show this week, surely the nicest man ever to have idolised John McEnroe, rocking from cricket club to 100 club, Sean TRACEY.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well.
And taking a break from teaching business people how to do business stuff. I don't know, this is the only thing I'm qualified for. You can call him Al, because that's his name. Al Hotch.
Morning, Nakul. Morning, everyone. How are we all doing? It is Sunday, isn't it? And it is still May. All these days are running into one.
Yes, it's the 950th of May. Welcome, friends. Let's take this back right to the very first of the first. Sean, what is your first cricketing memory?
Well, when I got your questions, I had to go back into the midst of time, do some research even. And I actually think my first cricketing memory was a charity game at Thaden Boys Cricket Club, Thaden Boys Cricket Club versus Tottenham Hotspur. And I remember, not much about it, but I do remember people like Alan Gildine, Martin Chivers, Jimmy Greaves being there. Thaden Boys Cricket Club, as it still is a very part of the social hub of the village, and you used to go down there regardless, whether you played cricket, knew about cricket, whatever. It's a huge social scene there, and this was very much. I was very young. I mean, I was, I probably wasn't even 10. But I do remember seeing the Tottenham Hotspur stars at the time coming out in cricket whites, and me being. I do seem to remember being quite confused that they weren't playing football. And they were wandering out with these wooden things, and I didn't quite get it.
And have you been confused by Spurs ever since?
Totally, yeah.
For those,
I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. For those who don't know the UK geography, so I'll just set the scene. Where is Thaden Boys?
Thaden Boys is a village in which 19 miles east of central London. Growing up there, it's a very pretty village. I mean, it still is really. Only has about back then. It probably only had about 2,500 people. It's got a few more in it now. It's a commuter town. It's on the central line, so you can get straight into central London. But no, very very nice place, and it has a lovely cricket club. Actually, Fred Titmus played there for a season, I believe, and I've got a picture, I think, of Andy Ward playing there as well. That was on the Thaden Boys Cricket website for some bizarre reason.
Yeah, more Guerilla links to Thaden Boys. I've just found actually a picture of Jimmy Greaves padding up in a charity game in 1963. So that's a little bit earlier than you're talking about.
That's a little bit earlier, yeah. You've got to remember that at the time, and probably actually still now, a lot of these guys lived in the area. Chigwell's just down the road. Martin Chivers had a pub, I think, in Epping, or in that area, or lived in Epping even. So, they were locals.
Yeah, and it's before the days of influx of international players, people going off to all four corners of the world. You played for a local team and you lived local when it was the off season. So
yeah, and they were probably all alcoholics.
Yeah, just this is not an old school football podcast, but this would have been the days of the the maximum wage, and in the days of severe restrictions over foreigners across Europe. I think probably one foreigner per squad at the time. So British footballers were not so in demand, even ones as prolific as Jimmy Greaves, who is a cricket fan to this day. Al Hotchkiss, your first cricketing memory?
So geography-wise, I live on the Wirral. If you don't know where the Wirral is, if you aim for Liverpool and just miss. So in the gap between Liverpool and Leeds, that's kind of roughly where I'm from. So my first memory is summer holidays. Summer holidays going to where most families of my type went. We went to Anglesey for our holidays, which is right at the top left-hand corner of Wales. And I can remember being on Triada Bay Beach in all four seasons in one day. But so long as it was raining, we're on the beach, and cricket's, these little tiny cricket stumps and things like that, and playing proper cricket and French cricket and all this type of stuff. That's kind of my abiding first cricket memory is learning how to play dreadfully across the line, playing French cricket with the rest of my family, and just being just loving it. And even a tennis ball hit off the middle of a cheap cricket bat gives you a thrill like nothing else.
So was it a cricket set bought from a petrol station? Do you remember those?
Either from a petrol station. I mean,
you got the whole thing, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's like the whole kit and caboodle. 4 stumps, because you don't need obviously stumps at each end.
Brilliant.
Tennis ball that's lousy and would split if you hit it like 3 or 4 times in a really hearty manner. But yeah, even to the point where, if it was a really nice day and lots of people on the beach and stuff like that, that some of these games would kind of amorphize and join in together, and all of a sudden you find yourself that you're fielding in somebody else's game. Loved it.
That's the classic thing of playing on the Maidans in India, where you find yourself simultaneously fielding at mid-on in one game and third man in another. So set the timeline for it. So what kind of period would that be? And then also segue into your first games, Al, watching for live and then on TV. So what kind of time period are we talking?
So my first cricketing memory of watching on the television. My oldest memory cannot be my first one, simply because of my age. So the oldest thing that I can remember watching on the telly and having a distinct feeling that I've watched it. I couldn't have watched the 81 Ashes live. I know that all the sense that I've watched it is by watching it on reruns on wet summer days. But the first memory that I can actually definitively say that I know that I watched it is the 1984 summer tour of the West Indies. And just the absolute devastation that team created in all 3 phases of the ball, and just being gobsmacked by this incredible team. So I would have been 9 years old at the time that took place, and it was just, at that point, Richie Benno, you could probably describe as a really cheap babysitter in our house, because my mum and dad could have put me in front of that telly at 11 o'clock and I wouldn't move. I still find Tom Graveney's voice to be soothing, even on the most difficult of days and things like that, and Jim Laker and Peter West and Richie Benno and things like that. But it's the 84 West Indies team that's the first team that I can remember. For some reason, I don't remember the 83 World Cup or that Indian team the year before. But yeah, it's 84 in West Indies for me. That's my first. That's the first time I watched it on the telly. I had to wait an awful long time. First games live, probably the games I played when I was at school, and then kind of on a more regular basis when I eventually moved with after uni. Going to work down on the south coast, going to watch Hampshire games in Southampton.
Okay, so watching live cricket in person wasn't a feature of your adolescence?
Absolutely not. No. We didn't have a car until I was a teenager. We were okay, but we weren't affluent. I mean, we didn't go to any football games. We didn't go into any cricket games or anything like that. But I can remember being encouraged about. I mean, we'll talk more about the reasons that I really love cricket so much, and it was, a parent and grandparents who bought me books, and just being able to say, you've got to understand why you like the things you like, and so my formative years is far more of a television and radio experience than it is as of an experience of watching a game live, which is probably at odds with what most of has been said by the other contributors to Guerilla Cricket.
Yeah, well, what we found is there's a huge range of different origin stories and different ways that people find cricket, and that's why I started this series and why I'm quite interested to continue it, is because I like being able to explore and to bring out the numerous roads by which we all find ourselves here as people who think that getting into a not windowless but less than salubrious flat in southeast London at 3 a.m. To commentate on a cricket match is a perfectly acceptable way to spend time. So that West Indies squad in 1984, Clive Lloyd captaining towards the end of his career. He retired at the end of that year. Greenwich, Haynes, Gomes, Richards, Richardson, Logie, Dujon, Thelston Payne, non-playing member of the squad, Roger Harper, Eldine Baptiste, bowling attack of Holding, Garner and Marshall, Courtney Walsh, yet to make his test debut, a non-playing member of the squad, and Winston Davis replacing Milton Small. A 5-0 win for the all-conquering West Indies of that period. Sean, your first games watching live and on TV. We'll come on to your first game playing, because there's you found an incredible bit of cricketabilia about that. But first, your first games watching live and on TV and on radio as well. We are a radio show, and I mean, I'm quite interested in the different experiences of having cricket formed on TV and on radio.
Well, obviously, having spent a lot of time talking to a lot of all the people involved in Guerilla Cricket, my kind of segue into it all is quite odd in that, as you all know, tennis was my thing. So cricket didn't play really any part in my younger years, either watching or listening. However, for some bizarre reason, and it's stuck in my mind to this day, to the fact that this morning I found it on YouTube, my first memory of watching cricket, and for Lord knows why, but I remember vividly sitting at home watching the 1977 B&H Cup semi-final, Gloucestershire versus Hampshire, because of Mike Proctor. Now, I had no idea who he was, what was going on, really. I mean, obviously, I know it's cricket and whatever else. And being a sports person, you do know. But I wasn't really into cricket. But I just remember sitting there watching this guy bowl. And I think, Al, you mentioned Hampshire.
Yeah.
You might remember or have heard of Mike Proctor's 6 for 13 in that semi-final. But the thing that stuck in my head was this guy was running in, very, very massively long run-up, very kind of awkward looking. Didn't look like a professional sportsman particularly. Shirt halfway down, exposing his hairy chest, with this bizarre bowling action, but getting these guys out, some of whom the names I knew. A couple of West Indians were involved in that match. So that is my first. The reason it stuck in my head, and I was so pleased I found it on YouTube. God bless the internet. Was just that I had to reaffirm what I thought at the time, that this guy just didn't look right. And he had quite an odd bowling act. Brilliant bowler, as I've subsequently found out down the years, being gotten into it more. But his style just stuck with me that day. And I remember sitting there just watching it, just laughing at the time, because 1977, I was full blown tennis, nothing else, on my radar. And I have no idea why I watched it. I didn't know what the B&H Cup was or anything. In fact, I know more about it now than I did when I watched it live. Again, thanks to the internet and my brain, which is still functioning, even though it's not being used much these days, my first live experience was a friend's father who was really into cricket and was a member at Essex, took us to see the West Indians play Essex in 1980. Now, this was a team of, Greenwich, Haynes, Alvin Carrick-Duran, Clive Lloyd, Marshall, Roberts, Garner, Holding. Now, there was a name there that I've missed off because it segues probably into something else we'll talk about, because I remember sitting there. Again, I wasn't really into it, cricket as such, but I knew obviously who all these people were, and I watched a bit of cricket on TV. And then this guy walks out onto the square, and I was just like, wow, this guy is a rock star. This guy is something else. This guy had an aura, a swagger. I mean, you all know who I'm going to talk about. It's Viv Richards.
We might be talking about the same guy when we talk about cricketing heroes then, in that case.
It was just one of those moments. And it's like the first time I saw Tiger Woods in the flesh at the Open. There was something else about him. There was something else that the other players didn't have. I mean, the fact that he scored 122 that day against Essex, but there was an aura. There was something else there. There was a kind of like I say, it's a bit like Seve. Seeing Seve for the first time, he was like a film star, a rock star. It was in a relatively dowdy kind of environment. Cricketers, the village blacksmith types. This gorgeous looking bloke walking out.
Yeah.
And there was not an arrogance, but a confidence, the way he held himself, and then the way he played. And I'll never forget it, just sitting there, just going, oh my God, actually, this is really cool. Yeah. This isn't a fuddy-duddy sort of, he's got 32 for 4 off. That was what cricket was to me. A bit of Johners, all this language that I didn't really understand. Suddenly this guy's just come out there and just gone wallop,
With your tennis background, you appreciate that tennis is a game of reaction, and you haven't got an awful lot of time to think. But there are some people who can make it look like they've got forever when everybody else is rushed around them.
Yes.
And I'm assuming it's roughly that kind of same thought process, of looking at someone and going, it's the same game because I haven't moved since I started watching it, but you're playing it differently than everybody else.
And I wanted to come on to that. This is something that came up last week about appreciating the physicality of cricketers and getting to see that live as opposed to seeing it on TV, because you understand suddenly that this is a game played by human beings with bodies, and in theory, at least, there are only certain things that a body should be able to do. But you both talked about that West Indian team and Sean seeing them live in 1980. This wasn't the complete hammering that the West Indies gave England. It was 1-0 in that series, remaining 4-all, drawn due to rain. But you have Viv Richards in the game you're talking about at Essex. I've just found the scorecard. The County Ground at Chelmsford, a 50-over match on the 23rd of May 1980. Viv Richards scores 122. Desmond Haynes scores 88. No one really else scores anything, particularly John Lever takes a 5. This is a good Essex team as well. Graham Gooch is in it. Yeah. Keith Fletcher is captaining it. Keith Pont, whose brother Ian we had on the show the other week talking about fast bowling. Ray East and John Lever. And it is the classic West Indies bowling attack of Marshall, Roberts, Garner, and Holding. And
well, I was going to go on to that. The other side of it, of that day, was the brutal nature of the of their attack. Because there you had, this wonderful batting lineup, but then it almost became that there was a violence to it as well. I can remember sitting there going, bloody hell, and I won't talk about it now, but this goes on to something about, the first game played that I played in. But there was a very violent side to it, which, in the game that I was playing all the time, tennis, you're not going to get hurt playing tennis, really. There, so I witnessed that firsthand as well, and it did. I mean, that was the time. If I hadn't been full blown playing tennis tournaments and matches and whatever, I probably would have walked down from the tennis club to the cricket club and said, "Can I have a game?" Because I didn't have the time. But I then did used to watch on the TV a lot more after seeing them live. And I followed the West Indies. I didn't really follow England because I still had in my head, well, they're a bit dull. I want the Hollywood. I want the excitement, and that's why I stuck with watching the West Indies as much as I could back then,
I don't think you're alone in cricket fans who came of age cricketing in terms of cricket during the 1980s and the late 70s.
Yeah.
The excitement and the glamour and the slight area of rebellion, even though they were the best team in the world at the time. I've also just looked up the scorecard of the Benson and Hedges semi-final you were talking about, Gloucestershire versus Hampshire at I don't think it was the Rose Bowl back then, the county ground in Southampton.
Yeah,
would have been then. So Gloucestershire score 180. Sadiq Mohammed and Zahir Abbas are there. Other overseas players. Nobody really scores any runs apart from Sadiq Mohammed and Stovold, the Andy Stovold, the Gloucestershire keeper, another exiled South African. And then Hampshire with Gordon Greenidge and Barry Richards as one of the all-time great domestic opening partnerships, make 9 and 3 between them. And Mike Proctor takes 6 for 13. Those of you who don't know much about Mike Proctor, he was a South African who had his career cut short when South Africa were banned due to apartheid in 1970. Only played 7 tests and then came over to play for Gloucestershire and bowled with a very whippy action that made it look as though he was bowling off the wrong foot. And a fine attacking, powerful batter as well as a very fast, genuinely fast bowler. And probably those who watched him play say he's capable of keeping the couple Dave Hadley, Botham, and who's the other great all-rounder? And Imran quartet of the 80s company in terms of being great all-rounders. But we've mentioned it a couple of times. Sean, I do want to get onto this this first game of yours that you played. You found the scorecard this week. And you sent me a photo of it, and we'll post it on Twitter at some point.
Yeah. Well, bizarrely, a friend of mine last week, and Mark, who's actually played on that game, M. Gilbert, he sent it to me on WhatsApp with no text, and that is what he does. He pictures, whatever, and he just bang sent it through. And I looked at it, I'm going, oh my God, yeah, bloody hell. Right, okay. So the background to it was every year. You're
not going to be able to see that. I'm holding it up to the screen. I will share this with people on Twitter so they can see the glory of it. It's a handwritten scorecard. It's pretty low rent. It's just a series of tally marks. A couple of different pens.
Well, at the end of every summer, Faden Boys Tennis Club played a game against Faden Boys Cricket Club. They share the same patch of ground, actually beautiful ground, donated to the village by the Buxton family in perpetuity, never to be developed. And what it was the cricket club obviously didn't like the tennis club. They thought they were a bunch of sissies playing a sissy game and that they were the hard men with a hard ball. And there was a bit of animosity between the two clubs. And every year, this went on before I was able to play. They'd get the tennis club down there and give them a good kicking on the cricket pitch. I mean, there was never a tennis match with the cricketers because they couldn't play. But so this went on for years, and it was always a slaughter. But there was afterwards there was food and drink. It was just kind of trying to get the two clubs to kind of be a bit more friendly, I believe. Anyway, as we got a bit older, and the names on that list are all of a certain age and a certain level of athleticism, let's say. The guy who used to run it, B. Barrett, I think he's on there, Brian, he said, look, guys, come on, you lot can probably hit a ball, come down and play this game against the cricket club. So we said, yeah, fine, whatever. And we went down there and beat them. Oh, God, did it really not go down very well. They were fuming. But as you see on the card, there's a person there who got 54 runs, was bowled. And that highlight, that kind of got some people in the cricket club a bit interested in this guy and pursued him relentlessly for a number of years. But I didn't have the time because of tennis to commit to a season playing cricket. I used to go down to the nets early on, and then I'd just disappear because I'd be playing. Eventually, when I sort of calmed down the tennis, I did go and play for them for a few seasons. So I have a very, very patchy record when it comes to playing the game. But yeah, that was my first ever proper, apart from picking up a bat and in a mate's garden or something. That was the first time I wore pads, I wore gloves, I wore whites and a box, which was a communal box. But was told you can't go out there without it because these guys want to hurt you because you're from the tennis club. And they all played. Some of their first team played in this match because they wanted to make a point. I basically just stood there, didn't know what I was doing, just smashed the ball out around the ground for 54. And I can remember one of their fast bowlers getting so pissed off, and I had no idea that cricket had sledged. And I thought, this guy's being very rude to me. I think I'm doing quite well here. I've just hit him for 4. I thought, anyway, but that was my first sort of proper cricket match, and it was great fun. But then I walked in, and I was told I had to buy a jug of beer because I got over 50. I was like, well, what do you mean? Surely you buy me beer. I've done well. In fact, I was the highest scorer by a long chalk if you look at the card. Interesting little point there. There's a name on there called S. Gilbert, Simon Gilbert, Mark's brother, the brother of the guy who sent me that. He became and still is Thaden Boys Cricket Club's wicketkeeper, and actually played cricket with none other than not Fred Titmus at Thaden Boys. His name is
it turns out, is a small world. He was not keeping in this game. M. Gilbert was keeping, batting at number 9. So yes, the Thaden Boys Lawn Tennis Club 11, 125 for 9. I assume you were chasing?
I honestly can't remember.
Okay, we've only got one half of the scorecard, but 125 for 9. S. Tracy batting at number 3, top scores with 54, bowled. Everyone on the list is bowled apart from the captain A. Emery, who is batting at 6, who is caught. And M. Wright, the opener, was the only other member of that August 11 to pass 25. So an auspicious start for Sean. Alan.
You are the Lawrence Rowe of Guerilla Cricket.
Yeah, taking it back to 1980s West Indians. Alan, your first time strapping on the pads.
My first game playing at the age of 12. Summer of my second year in secondary school, or year 8 as it would now be called. We didn't get to play cricket in our first year. Volunteers welcome, and I was, as all teenagers are, petrified about my own lack of ability. I'm going to get laughed at. I'm not going to get in the team or anything like that. How am I going to get to play? I volunteered to wicket keep, and no one else wanted to do it. And that's how I worked my way onto the team. I'm left-handed, and that seemed to throw everybody in these practices for a bit of a loop. I did what most left-handers do. I learned to pull the ball and cut the ball. The idea of playing straight down the ground completely passed me by. Everything was going to be at 90 degrees. We talked a little bit about the idea of kind of like, you talked, Sean, about the idea of watching the brutality of it. The thing that I didn't take into consideration, because I hadn't played, especially with a real cricket ball, was just like, I remember hitting the ball for first ball and feeling this kind of shockwave go through the bat and through my arms, and it was just like, this isn't Kansas anymore. This is like completely different. Soon got used to that. So yeah, I was wicket keeper, and my dad went to America when I was young, to do some training with work, and brought me back a baseball glove. And I'm sure there are rules about what a wicket-keeping glove is meant to be, but for the love of me, I don't understand why it is that wicket-keepers don't stand there and essentially use like a baseball catcher's mitt, because it leaves one hand free to be able to throw the ball.
Well, we do see this. We do see this now with wicket keepers who will take a glove off as the ball's coming in to be able to throw it to the other end. Yeah, there are very tight regulations about what a wicket keeper can wear, and I'm sure it's to do with the size of the webbing on a wicket keeper's glove. So you were a combative wicket keeper who played square of the wicket. I think we've seen this film before. Yeah.
And as left-handers have a tendency to do in all forms of the game of the cricket, there's never a meh kind of okay innings. It's death or glory, Nakul. It is everything goes hard, or it is a noodle-armed defensive fend to second slip for next to no runs. And I managed to play both of those innings pretty early in my career.
Well, we're interested in the glory. So what is your highest score on a cricket field? And we'll ask this question to Sean as well before we go into the break.
I mean, considering how low down the order that I probably ended up batting, it's probably not too high. It's probably in the mid-30s, somewhere around that. But things that are cavalier towards the end of innings and things like that wasn't really placed in a position to be able to open innings up and stuff like that. So, and my biggest downfall was that, you've got to hit the gaps, and there are times where all you do is hit fielders.
It's an important role down the order, the combative counter-attacking wicketkeeper, a player ahead of your time, Sean.
But nothing is close 50, 56, did you say it was 54, 56?
Was it 54?
Yeah,
I don't want to add runs onto this.
Yeah, well, we got the 54 on debut. Was that is that your highest score as a cricketer?
No. It wasn't much more than that. The one that you remember it. I mean, it was 63. Thane Boys Sunday seconds versus Bishop Stortford at Bishop Stortford, and I was playing. I was about I don't know. I think I was always around about the number 6, number 7 batsman. Never played a defensive stroke in my life. Walked into bat. The guy goes, right, just take it easy. Don't go for it too much, blah, blah, blah. And I hit 2 sixes off the first 2 balls. It was, it was swing and hope. And I suppose coming from having a hand-eye coordination, tennis, whatever, I could hit the ball. And I did actually wallop the ball quite a lot. And I preferred fast bowlers to always got out to bloody spinners. Always. Because I just lost patience. I thought, well, this guy, I can smash this out of the ground. I don't care what he's doing with it. And of course, that's nonsense. But no, fast bowling I never had a problem with. But Bishop Stortford. It was right towards the end because I'd injured my finger, and I've still got that dodgy finger. And I was very good in the field, and whenever the ball hit the end of my fingers, this thing went solid for about 4 weeks, so I couldn't play. And it got to the point where I went to the hospital and they wanted to amputate it. It was an injury I got, but I said, no, I can't do that. So it kind of stopped my cricket career after about 3 years at Faden. But it was good fun for 3 years of it. And there was a lot of alcohol drank as well, because it was a Sunday seconds team. I never made it into the Saturday sides.
What an artist the world has lost in you. After the break, we'll talk cricketing heroes and how Sean and Al found their way onto Guerilla Cricket in the first place. But right now, we need to let you know how you can support the show and help secure our long-term future. So let's do that.
We need your money.
Alternative cricket commentary. Bringing you laughs, bringing you jingles, bringing you joy. We are Gorillas. We need your patreon.com/Guerilla Cricket.
Welcome back to the Guerilla Cricket podcast with me, Nakul Pande. We're discovering the guerrilla origin stories of Sean Tracey and Al Hotchkiss. Before the break, we discussed first cricketing memories and first games watched and played. Let's now get into what makes cricket truly great, the people who play it. Sean, you've talked about your first cricketing hero being Viv Richards. Is he the one who's stuck around in the mind, or has there been anyone to supplant the great Viv in terms of most impactful cricketing hero?
Not supplant him, and not the most impactful, because he was the one that really drew me into it as a fan and as a watcher and a follower. Subsequently, I would say, and it's an obvious one, I mean, I do remember watching the Ashes, Botham's Ashes, as it's called, specifically that Headingley game. Beefy, although, you know, now you might consider him a bit of a plonker or whatever, but at the time you were like, this guy has got that X factor thing about him as well, in a different way. But certainly Viv I never forgot the impact he had on me. I mean, there's been moments in the last few years. You go back, even go back to last year with Ben Stokes, and you start to think, oh, hang on a minute, this guy's got something about him. So it's not kind of like it was only good in the 80s. It was only good, then. I've seen some bloody great cricket over the last few years. In fact, and it ties in with, joining Guerilla Cricket. I've seen some fantastic cricket. So, yeah, I mean, Viv is the one for me. Not to say that I dismiss everything else. And
I'm in the same boat as you. You could do YouTube dives, and I would sit there for hours and watch what seems like a lazy push through mid wicket from Viv Richards, and I would sit. I don't understand how you can put so little effort in and the ball goes so quickly and seems to run away from fielders. It was
like Marvin Gaye while you're doing it.
Yeah, it was just effortless. What I've come to realise is brutality with regards to, but seemed to be just to be in a different level of control. Kind of with what I watched on the television, B&H games and stuff like that. Somerset were in an ascendancy, so like Richards, Botham, Garner, and then watching Botham do Botham things.
Yeah.
But this idea of that it's essentially non-conformity, but and that as time goes on, you become older, you learn to appreciate different things about what the game actually entails.
I mean, there's a whole list of people who I down the years subsequently love, through Pakistan, India, Australia, even. I mean, for me, watching, God, I forgot his name, Shane Bourne. Bowl. I mean, that was theatre at its best, when he was stood there and just tossed the ball between his hands before he bowled. I mean, I used to be gripped by that. So yeah, it's not just that. I don't have that kind of everything else is rubbish kind of attitude, and they were the best. That's what drew me in.
But isn't it weird about sometimes it's just the tiniest little things and details that turn around and make you prefer certain bowlers to other ones. Like I prefer Ambrose to McGrath. I prefer. I love Rahul Dravid to the point where sometimes I would almost prefer watching Dravid hit this, Dravid and Laxman rather than, sometimes there's almost the sense of an underdog type of spirit rather than Tendulkar's just going to come in and do Tendulkar things and things like that. And Callis and Amla in the South African team, and you look at it and you go, Callis, he's an autonomon, he's doesn't really seem to do anything exciting, but you appreciate the fact that he does it really well. Probably the same reason why some people probably prefer, we all like watching Federer play tennis, but it's only because we watch replays that we'd realise how good Sampras was. Except that Sampras just made it look a bit boring when he won all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The point of this is exactly
No,
as you say. The point is not that it were better in my day, lad. The point is that you only get one chance at a first cricketing hero, and your brain is only not imprinted with cricket once, and nothing sticks in the brain as much as it does when you are that age, coming out of kind of in those tween years. And we seem to have identified the age of 8 or 9 as, for most of the people we've spoken to on Guerrilla Origin Stories, is about the time that cricket first imprints itself on that sponge-like brain that you have when you're a child, and you remember everything. You are not just about, you might not necessarily remember, that it was outswinger, in-swinger, or that it was a few pushes for one followed by the rasp of fours. But what you remember is where you were. You remember how it made you feel. You remember
I was 18.
the sense of everything being larger than life. And that's what we want to bring out on when we talk about first cricketing heroes. Not to say that things were better in my day or whatever. I'm not interested in that, and as a person, and I don't think we should be interested in that as a show.
Without those roots, you can't. We couldn't talk about what we talk about. You've got to have as wide a range of comparison. I mean, I'm sorry to admit it. I'm a maths graduate. I've found numbers fascinating my entire life. I think part of what drew me to cricket was the fact that there were so many things that you could count, and the numbers meant something. Slightly, and as much as I love 1-0 and all that type of stuff with football, but it is such a analytically rich game that it actually allows you to be able, in certain regards, to draw comparisons, which is why there is always this debate about how the game should change.
Yes, for sure. And the richness of the analysis on a numerical, from a numerical standpoint, has only increased in the last few years, and the sophistication of that has only increased in the last few years. And we're all the better for it, going past the basic numbers to what those numbers really mean, and making those comparisons richer. I firmly believe that things get better and more interesting the more you find out about how they work, and not less. I know you two are both followers of baseball, Alan in particular, in those, and baseball certainly shares that love of number and of definition and of what's the word I'm looking for.
It allows appropriate comparison across generations to a certain degree, obviously, of course, but it just allows you to be able to consider the entirety of the history of something while it is you're watching it in the present, and I think that's a rare gift that only some sports allow.
So we've alluded there to what attracted you both to the sport. So it's that combination of history and of physicality and of numerical and historical richness. I do want to talk about, we haven't been able to get to this for the last few weeks, but we have the chance now. What got you into Guerilla Cricket, or was it Test Match Sofa, as was into the show as a listener and thus as a commentator and on-air contributor? And we'll start with you, Al.
I found Test Match Sofa by mistake. I was watching a winter Test match. I was looking for a scorecard of a game that they were looking for, and there was this advert placed in the top left-hand corner of the website that talked about Test Match Sofa. I thought, that seems a bit weird. What on earth are they talking about? Clicked on the link, listened to these people talk in a way that. So I do how most people, interacted with radio and television, which is I turned the Sky commentary down, and I was listening to these guys, and it was all of the people that I am so thankful to consider friends at this particular moment in time, and some others as well. It was like listening to mates, but they were also mates that were informed. And when they turned around and said that, oh, by the way, you can get in touch with us as well, we all have opinions and we all think certain things and we all try to understand why certain things are happening. And being able to interact with a group of people in the same way that you can't do that with TMS, or you couldn't do it at the time. And then to have those opinions confirmed by these clever people, to say something funny that would be seen as funny. If you are the type of person I am, that is catnip. And I was hooked from that moment on. I then went on I was fortunate enough to meet them because my work takes me all over the country, and they were having a get together prior to the Ashes in 2015. So I've been listening for about 4 years before I turned around and met everybody in person. In the days that we went to, I'm trying to the name of the pub that we did the 2015 Ashes at.
The Jetlag Bar no longer exists on Cleveland Street near the old TV studios that we used to broadcast out of. So that would have been then we did a live run through from the Jetlag of the New Zealand versus England T20. I believe that was a really fun evening. I didn't realize that was the first time you'd met any of us. And that was the case for a few people who we'd known via Twitter. It was like a joyous worldwide reunion. Yeah,
I'd met them. They said, this is where we're going to be. I was there all week. So I went and saw them after I'd finished work, jetted across central London in order to be able to meet them, sat down, had a drink. Hendo was just about to go on, and he turned around to me and he just goes, do you want to give this a go? And after those comedic turning around moments, and then just oh, you actually mean me? Hendo's trust in my ability not to freeze, whether it was that he had nobody else and I was just filling in an emergency, I don't know. I don't care. Everything they've asked me to do has been an absolutely joyous experience that I will never take for granted for the rest of my life. Being able to sit there with two mates and talk, and also to talk about cricket in an educated way, but also to talk rubbish, is the highlight of almost of my 9-year-old would pinch themselves if I was to go back in the Wayback Machine and find them and to tell them that's what they were going to do.
That's really heartwarming stuff. Sean, your journey with the sofa as was and now Guerilla Cricket goes way back, right?
Apparently, I was the first listener. Not unlike now, I was in a kind of self-imposed lockdown. 2009, I was on gardening leave from a company I'd worked for about 13 years, got taken over by another company. So I was at home, 2009, arsing around, not really doing much, playing a lot of golf. Then I saw, it was in the very early days of Twitter. Now, I got a background in IT, so I was always kind of looking at this social media stuff that was going on, downloading whatever, well, it wasn't really called an app back then, but getting onto these sites and looking and whatever. And then I saw a message from Stephen Fry, of all people, talking about these guys in South London who set up this kind of cricket commentary thing in someone's flat. I thought, well, this sounds interesting, very punk rock, which appealed to me, get off your ass, do it yourself kind of attitude. So I tuned in, and it was, I was a bit nervous at first because I thought it was going to be very much like, the Sky thing where they have the football fans do the commentary.
Fan zone.
Oh God, it's awful. And I thought, I hope it's not like that, where it's all just a bunch of blokes swearing and just, being kind of rubbish. And I've tuned in and I'm sort of sitting there listening and I'm thinking, this is brilliant. I'm actually laughing. And who's this guy that sounds like Jonathan Agnew? Wasn't an impersonation. I thought, that isn't Jonathan Agnew, is it? And my first message to him, which was email back then, is that Jonathan Agnew on live? And then it became, nothing happened because they said they wanted to get listeners in, sort of thing. there was a discussion about names that had changed, brands that had changed, Marathon, Snickers, all that stuff. And I just mentioned Nestle and Nestles, and this became the moniker that I now have on Guerilla Cricket, Nestle Boy, because Nigel the Bear said, "What happened to that bloke, that Nestle Boy bloke?" Now, they didn't know really anything about me back then. And I was, as Sophia used to sort of get very intrigued, this international man of mystery, because I didn't, a bit like Not Fred still does, I didn't tell them anything, you know, and I just kept sort of putting these messages. But it was just this astonishingly, it was well produced. It was a kind of an accident that it was as good as it was, I thought. Because I got the feeling that this was done on and I come to realise it was done on a wing and a prayer, and no one really knew what they were doing. But boy, did it work. And it was perfect. And when they veered off into stuff about, you know, music, films, and all these other characters that were on there, like Zoob, you know, this weird kind of guy, Zoob, who was on, and they were hilarious characters. Now, obviously, it morphed into something else. I mean, I was very upset that it stopped. But then I got this message, something mysterious message on email, I think it was, or Twitter from Nigel about something happening. And boom, you know, it resurrected itself. And I'd gone back to work. Or I found a new job. I was working in Chancery Lane, and they were in the TV studio at the time. And I'd never met any of them, but was on a constant chat basis with them all the time, and just said, well, why don't you, you know, can I come up and say hello to you, have a beer, you know, it'd be nice to see you, because I'm now just over the road. And so I did, which was kind of hilarious in itself. Walked into the TV studio, it's all happening. No one had seen a picture of me. No one knew who I was, and I walked in there. But Nigel answered the door, and I said, hello, I'm Nestle. Well, all right, mate, blah, blah, blah. I remember Hendo sitting there scowling at me because he didn't know quite who I was, and I just went up to him and said, "Hi, all right, Hendo, I'm Nestle Boy," and then his demeanour changed. And like Al, the bear just goes, "Can you go on and read the tweets then?" And I've gone, "Sorry." He goes, "Go on and read the tweets." And I've gone, "I can't do that." Like, oh my God, you know. So I just went on, and boom, it you know, I never looked back since. And like Al says, it's one of those things, like at the moment, I desperately want to get into that flat in Sydenham. I'm so desperate to get back there and sit around with everybody and just chat and just say hello and and then watch some cricket and talk about it and talk about films and cycling and whatever else that comes up during a day's commentary, because it is, as Al says, one of the great things in our lives. I think anyone who's done it will have the same opinion, that it's just wonderful.
Yeah,
it's
a second family. It really is. I mean,
to have it.
We've talked, haven't we, Sean, about going and watching, about we've got to get together and watch the last day of the Open or the last day of the Masters and stuff like that, because we both like watching the golf and stuff like that. And you've got Sevi stories for days, which I'll lap up and stuff like that. But you could not wish to meet a broader church of people. Yeah. Some of them wholesome, some of them offensive, but there's this wonderful camaraderie that makes we are so much better than the sum of our aggregated parts, and it's so lovely to know that either work's going to give me a chance to go down there because I'm going to be in London, or I'll just do what I did for last year's World Cup, take a week off work and go down there and you know, basically squat.
I mean, the thought of, you know, this what we're going through at the moment, sort of finishing, and just the thought of just ringing that doorbell and then just walking up those stairs with a Sainsbury's bag in my hand and going, "Hello, everybody."
Yeah.
You know, the thought of getting off the train at Sydenham, there's just right up there. You know,
it's a lovely thought.
It's just such a wonderful bunch of people, and it's such a fun thing. It's such a fun thing, and because people who know I do it, and I kind of describe it to them, being not being overly kind of flowery about it, but I can't really get through to them really what it's like, because it sounds shit when I say, oh yeah, we sit in a flat in South London and commentate on the cricket all day and it's live, and these people tweet in and people go, oh, well, sounds a bit boring, doesn't it? But I don't go into the other stuff.
No, that's just for us.
The French, yeah. I leave that out and sort of just go, oh, it's this, and they go, oh, well, do you get paid? I go, no, but it's kind of like, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And it will come back.
So it will be back. There's lots of talk about how cricket can come back, and I'm sure we'll talk about that on another podcast. But it isn't just, it is for us, but it's also for you guys out there who've listened to us through the years, and we can't wait to be back. I'm so glad we managed to get this question in, because it's really heartwarming just thinking about it and talking about it, and how I managed to get you guys to become part of this Guerilla Cricket family. And on that note, that's it for this week's Guerilla Cricket podcast. Thank you very, very much to this week's Origin Story sharers, Sean Tracy.
No problem. Thank you, Nakul, for doing it.
And Al HOTCHKISS.
Thank you, Nakul. Stay safe, everyone.
And thank you as ever to our editor and producer, John Stone. Remember, if you sign up as a patron at any donation level at patreon.com/Guerilla Cricket, you get all of our podcasts a day early. So that's this show, our county show, Guerilla Cricket, hosted by Tony Bishop, and maybe again at some point, who knows, the alternative Guerilla Cricket podcast. If you don't have the spare cash, don't worry, we won't leave you podless. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, and Podbean. So please download, share, and subscribe. Those of you who are listening on iTunes in particular, please leave us a review and a 5-star rating so more people can find the show and create their own Guerilla origin stories. On Tuesday the 26th, so the day after this podcast drops, we'll have Game 7 of our live and interactive dice cricket tournament, the Dick Abroad Alzat Trophy, during which we're raising money not just for ourselves, but for our friends at the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, who do amazing work combating type 1 diabetes. It's a cause very close to our hearts, as type 1 is what robbed us of our dear friend and commentary colleague Dan Lucas in March 2017.
Any money for that is welcome.
Social distancing regulations mean we can't do our usual charity game to help JDRF out, so please donate via our JustGiving page. The link to that is pinned to our Twitter and Facebook pages and in our Instagram bio, and it's in the show notes for this podcast. We'll be back with another GC podcast this week. Till then, stay safe and don't go taking any unauthorized trips to Durham, you hear? Bye-bye.